there's a hidden layer of cost quietly eroding the return on investment that you're projecting from your AI initiatives. And people are really just starting to connect that back to the architecture decisions, and particularly the type of AI model or language model that you're choosing to deploy. Organizations that shift from large language models to small language models for specific assistant applications, they're seeing up to 5 times OPEX reduction and around a $2 million annual saving. Frontier LLMs can consume up to 100 times more energy per million tokens than a task-specific alternative model.
What's the biggest misconception or pitfall that contact center leaders are facing in the AI space right now? What sort of events have you been at recently?
Yeah, so been at quite a few over the last few months. I was up in Edinburgh for the European Conversational AI Summit, which was always a really fascinating event. Then back to London, been at a couple of partner summits as well over the last few weeks. And it's quite interesting the points you raised as well, because I've seen a very similar theme surfacing across a lot of these conferences that we've been attending. The shift in the market to agentic AI really is front and center of every conversation at the moment. And as you can imagine, we've moved from kind of asking whether we trust what AI says to whether we trust what AI is actually authorized to do on our behalf. And I feel like that changes everything, especially when it comes to architecture decisions, model of choice. The consequences of these types of choices, they're not just technical, they're commercial, regulatory, reputational as well. So I think, that's exactly what we're going to get into today.
Totally. Yeah, and I've been amazed at some of the venues we've been able to go to. And I think we were one at Tobacco Dock the other day, which was so cool, and a proper niche, rough and ready venue. But, the ones up in Edinburgh, what a beautiful location. But some of the customers that have been attending and the stories we've been hearing from some of the biggest brands in the world, it's pretty impressive, isn't it?
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, great. Well, let's just kick off the discussion to everyone who's listening, and thank you for signing in and listening to this podcast. The focus of the discussion today is around the hidden costs of large language models. And I guess we're framing it as large language model tax. I'd love to introduce Sally Hodgin, who's our principal AI consultant here at Connect. Sally is a specialist not only on the subject of artificial intelligence, but has a deep understanding of large language models, small language models, micro models, and sort of how to make the best selection there, but also has a deep understanding as to how to build the right technology toolkits and architect and design what journeys best suit your organization. So, Sally, thank you very much for joining us today. I'm sure you're going to school me in all things large language model and AI today, which is I'm very much looking forward to. Just to kick off the discussion, I guess sort of the opening question we want to focus on is, what's the biggest misconception or pitfall regarding AI right now in the market?
So that's a very interesting question. Also, thanks for having me, Jack. One of the biggest misconceptions I'm seeing right now is that AI model architecture and decisions around your technology investments are purely an IT decision. And it sounds kind of intuitive that technical decisions are being made by technical leads, but model selection and architecture selection directly impacts the metrics that are driving your commercial performance. So think of cost to serve, average handle time, customer experience scores, and even energy consumption as well. Those are your ESG targets. And it can introduce data sovereignty risk, and that also has direct regulatory and commercial consequences. These types of metrics, they're sitting on the desks of the CFO, the COO, your sustainability lead, if you have one in your organization, or your CX director. They're not sitting solely with a CTO at this stage. So kind of everyone in the business has skin in the game when these architecture decisions are being made. What we're seeing in some organizations, and these are the ones that we are really seeing have successful deployments, they're bringing all these leaders together into the conversation from day one. So they're aligning on outcomes before a single architecture decision is actually made. When that alignment isn't there, you're making technology decisions in isolation from the rest of the business. You can end up with quite a technically sound deployment, but it simply doesn't deliver on the commercial outcomes that you're looking to target. Part of this as well is there's this is what we refer to as the kind of hidden tax on your contact center. There's a hidden layer of cost sort of quietly eroding the return on investment that you're projecting from your AI initiatives, and people are really just starting to connect that back to the architecture decisions, and particularly the type of AI model or language model that you're choosing to deploy into your particular use cases as well.
Really interesting. And yeah, you think it's such a simple thing to select technology before deciding which journeys and the best value you're going to get out of which journey to implement first. But it makes logical sense. You need the right technology toolkit to satisfy the outcome of the journeys that you're deciding upon. And also, exactly. You've referenced energy consumption and sustainability. There's probably something that not many consider in an AI journey. So really interesting points.
Yeah.
What's the reality of AI architecture costs in most contact center deployments today then?
In reality, if you're not actually consciously thinking about your AI model architecture when you're designing your AI solution, you're very likely paying this sort of hidden tax that I spoke about. I often kind of refer to it showing up in 5 ways. The first one is this thing called kind of inference cost. So if you're routing your interactions that are quite simple interactions that don't need frontier scale reasoning through a frontier LLM, we refer to those as kind of the top models in the market at the moment, you're simply overpaying because you're using the most expensive tool available for a job that doesn't require that level of intelligence. The second one I kind of refer to is latency as well. If you think about an AI assistant application, even a few seconds of unnecessary delay can really just disrupt the natural flow of conversation. I think we've all been in one of those situations where you're talking to a voice assistant and you wonder if it's hung up on you because the pause between you finishing speaking and the agent starting to speak just goes on for a little bit too long and it just feels a bit unnatural. So not only is that kind of a poor customer experience, but when you scale to thousands or even millions of interactions, those seconds really tend to add up. And that then has a direct impact on your cost to serve and your average handle time as well. The third one that I'm referencing, and you've just spoken about this now as well, Jack, energy costs. So frontier LLMs can consume up to 100 times more energy per million tokens than a task-specific alternative model or a kind of a micro model. So that can hit your cloud bill and also your ESG reporting. So that's where the kind of sustainability leads really do have skin in the game at that point. The fourth one, governance and compliance risk. So routing sensitive customer data via an API to a third-party hosted frontier model introduces a level of data security risk and also sovereignty exposure as well that many regulated organizations just simply can't accept. I guess finally it's quality. Generative models are probabilistic by nature. So that means kind of the same input doesn't always produce the same response. In compliance critical workflows in regulated contact center environments, that variability really does have an impact. Failed audits, agent rework, escalations to agents as well. So you've got kind of guardrails and RAG as well to control the output here. But as someone, I think one of the conferences I attended up in Edinburgh, as they put it, we're kind of wrangling with non-deterministic technology and trying to force it to behave deterministically. So for very high volume structured compliance critical interactions, smaller models are often more reliable and cost efficient as well, as a choice for the architecture.
That's really interesting. So a smaller model is probably a better solution for a highly compliant organization, right? And I just want to touch on a point there. So why do organizations typically fall into the trap of just making a decision on a single large language model option?
I think it's quite understandable, to be honest, how organizations end up here. So you think of major CCaaS providers, CRM platforms, or any other technology solution that contact centers are running on. They have pivoted recently to be kind of AI native organizations. They have frontier LLM capability native to the platform. So it's just the path of least resistance really to kind of switch that on. There's two things that tend to kind of get missed here as a result. What they're measuring. So you've got a lot of organizations, they're tracking AI capability. So can it actually complete the call? Is it kind of technically viable, rather than the impact it has on the outcomes that drive commercial performance?
Right.
So yeah, when you consider what those outcomes are, I think I've spoken about them quite a bit before, but cost to serve, ESG, CSAT, etc. AI model architecture has a measurable influence on each one of them, and the size of the model you select, how it's deployed, how much context it processes, all of it really does shape those metrics.
Okay.
Second is model fit. So there's kind of a natural assumption that if an LLM is capable, it's the right tool for the job. But many contact center interactions, they're highly structured, very narrow in domain. Identification verification is a really good example of this. So that's actually a use case that's required on 74% of inbound calls across the UK. That type of use case, it requires speed, precision, and reliability really of output, not open-ended reasoning. Many platforms in the kind of in the contact center industry now are offering bring your own model capability, which is really interesting to see kind of the market pivot that way. So organizations can integrate their own domain specific smaller models alongside the native LLMs to actually open up an opportunity to kind of orchestrate an ensemble of models and leverage the best model at that moment based on the context.
That's a really interesting point, because as you say, many of the contact center providers out there, CRMs, going down this bring your own model route, right? Which is really powerful, but only if you choose the right model in the first place, right? So how does the choice of language model actually work, right? What are the different types? How do you make a decision?
In this specific context, I'll refer to three different types of language model. So they differ based on their size or their parameter count. You've got kind of LLMs at the top, or large language models. So these are, as the name states, they're the biggest ones. So they typically exceed around 20 billion parameters. They're amazing at reasoning, inferring context, managing particularly challenging or emotionally nuanced conversations. But it's not necessary to leverage a model of that size for all use cases, especially within a contact center environment. They're computationally very expensive. So every token processed costs significantly more than a smaller model's token processing cost. They're very energy intensive, so this has real implications for infrastructure cost and, as we spoke about, ESG commitments as well. Because they're predominantly externally hosted on third-party servers or clouds, this is quite important actually, especially for regulated environments. Customer data passes via API to those third-party clouds for processing. This introduces a real risk around data security and also data sovereignty, depending on where that server or cloud is hosted. And many organizations it's just not acceptable to carry that kind of risk. In the middle, you've got small language models, and these operate in the low billions of parameters, very well suited to workflow orchestration, routing logic, post-call summarization, for example. And I was listening to a Gartner webinar recently, and they've basically published that organizations that shift from large language models to small language models for specific assistant applications, they're seeing up to 5 times OPEX reduction and around a $2 million annual saving, just from making that shift. Because they're smaller, they can often be deployed within a company's own infrastructure. You can be confident that your data is secure, it doesn't leave your organization's bounds, and that directly addresses the data security and sovereignty concerns as well that come with the larger models. At the base of this kind of model tiering, you've got micro language models. These have around, I think, under 100 million parameters. They're trained for highly specific tasks, so intent classification, appointment booking, or identification verification. They are very fast, inferences milliseconds, and they're highly accurate within their domain. If you switch from a frontier kind of larger language model to a task-specific micro model for the right use case, you can reduce energy consumption by 95 to 99%, which is huge if you're tracking ESG. I think one of the real opportunities here is actually orchestrating all three together. So deploying the right level of intelligence for each task and leveraging the context of the conversation to make a judgment on which model that is in that moment.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting. So not only are we saying that selecting the right large language model is important, if you want to improve accuracy and I guess get the specificities of your business surfaced through an AI model, having a small language model is really important. And then layering in a micro model on top of that to enhance the next layer of accuracy or very specific tasks. Having all three is going to build, I guess, sort of unify the right journey for your customer.
Yeah, it's often around, it's all around efficiency as well. So if you use the context of the conversation at that moment to understand what's the task at hand, how complex is it, does it really require the breadth of intelligence of a large language model, or will a micro model which operates at 95 to 99% less compute, would that be sufficient?
Yeah, I'd be really interested if people could put in the comments as well. Has the narrative of small language or micro model even been raised within your organization when you're going through an AI or an agentic transformational journey? I know certainly when we're speaking to customers at events, Sally, it's not even a vernacular on their lips right now.
Yeah.
And we're still educating the market about it. But I'd love to hear in the comments if anyone else has started to go down that route. So if the model tiers are the framework, as you just mentioned, what does getting the right model actually look like in practice?
A mature deployment looks in practice quite different to how most organizations actually are starting out. So rather than relying on a single model to handle everything, some contact centers, and something that we're running with as well, is actually orchestrated ensembles of models. So you distribute workloads across model tiers according to the context of the interaction and the complexity of each task. Something very interesting that we're working on at the moment as well is creating kind of using small language models to create digital twins of your top performing contact center agents. And those agents can then engage micro models underneath that are experts on each specific task that they would be performing within that contact center as well. From the customer's perspective, the experience is seamless. They've no visibility of the model architecture underneath, but from an organization's perspective, every piece of compute is actually earning its place. So you're paying for frontier intelligence only when it's required for the task at hand.
Interesting. Yeah, that's another really interesting point you've made. Training your model on your best people, right? How should contact center leaders make AI investment commercially successful? And I guess that's one of the answers. Train the model appropriately and you'll get the best outcome. Is there anything else they need to consider?
That's actually really interesting around domain specialized language models. So that's when you train a language model on data that's specific to your industry, but organizations are actually taking it a level further and training it on their exact interaction data with their customers, so that it's not just domain specific, but it's industry specific language models. And these types of language models, they can improve accuracy of recognition by between 20 to 30%, which
Wow.
is pretty huge. If I think about how to kind of bring this back to contact center leaders, so I think everything we've discussed today points to quite a specific conclusion, that the architecture that you choose within your AI investment in your contact center, it's a commercial strategy. It's not just solely a technical decision. So the opportunity is pretty significant as well. Contact Babel's report that I was reading the other day places UK contact center industry spend around £30 billion a year for handling inbound calls. AI is genuinely capable of transforming how that pot of money is deployed. The question is really whether organizations are applying the right level of intelligence to each workload, and whether the people that are accountable for those outcomes are in the room when those decisions get made. When we talk about, I guess, the hidden tax, I'd see a strategic tax avoidance in this context. And that's really about ensuring every pound of AI investment is generating proportionate value. So customer experience, cost, discipline, and operational outcomes are all improving together, not kind of trading off against each other based on a technology decision. That only really happens when these decisions are owned commercially, not just technically. I can't stress the importance enough of the operational leads being aligned on outcomes before these decisions are made.
Yeah, and again, I've just noted down a couple of points. Proportionate value is what a great statement, because I think, to summarize a lot of the points that have been made today, leveraging insights to define the journeys that you want to implement from a business level and input that into the technical decision making around what technology you're going to use is super important. There's several different models that you can leverage, whether they be large, micro, or small, to build the best outcome and journey. But there's cost considerations all around when going through an AI or an agentic transformation and using models, for example. So having a consideration around the proportionate value of the benefit that you're getting from implementing AI seems like such a logical thing, but probably something that not many are thinking about. As an output today, I guess this is where Connect have been really successful in driving these transformations with our customers. Is it's not just about what journeys are going to be important to giving your customers the best value, It's about, are you architecturally ready? Are you AI ready? And have you considered all the commercial impacts of the models versus the outcomes that you're looking to implement? And is that going to give you the best bang for your buck, or the best return, as well as the best customer satisfaction? So there's a lot of components to consider. If you were to sort of summarize sort of a key takeaway for, I wouldn't just say contact center leaders, but I would say leaders in organizations taking their business through an AI or an agentic transformation today, what would your key takeaway be?
AI is it's moving from just generating responses to actually autonomously executing downstream actions off the back of that. The commercial and the operational stakes of these decisions only increase. So getting model selection, orchestration, and governance right becomes even more important. The contact center is one of the most data rich, high volume environments you can deploy AI into. And that's a real advantage. And there's so much potential for realizing value in this space that the organizations that will compound value from this technology over time will bring commercial and operational leadership into architecture decisions, use context to match intelligence to the task at hand, and measure AI against the business outcomes that they're trying to target as well. So the hidden tax, as we've described it, it's avoidable. There's a huge opportunity. And I think the answer to that really lies hugely in your deployment strategy. And I think that's where kind of Connect Sweet Spot is supporting with that.
Absolutely. Oh, that's really interesting. Again, if anyone in the comments wants to note, I'd be interested to understand how many people have experienced their business just enforcing technology on them before thinking about journey, and how successful has that been? I think we've all experienced some of the crazy responses that we've seen in the market when AI is just deployed into a basic language model and it's doesn't understand the vernacular of your specific organization or your product. We've all experienced it and witnessed it in the market. So getting it right is imperative, but there is a much broader context around cost management. I think you've really highlighted today. So look, that was so interesting. I've learned a lot. I'm probably going to have to go and do some research now on sort of the sustainability impacts of deploying language models into an organization now. But Sally, thank you so much. And again, to everyone listening, we're more than happy and able to support you through a transformation of this kind, and understanding, do you have the right toolkit? Architecturally, are you ready? How are you making decisions on the journeys that will best suit your AI and agentic transformation? But Sally, thank you again. We look forward to our next episode.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Jack.